Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Layla Law-Gisiko. We have a large number of attendees tonight. We're very excited about the interest that this event has generated. So we're going to wait 30 seconds to get these attendees to join the webinar, and then we will get started. So thank you so much for your patience. All right, great. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Layla Law-Gisiko. I am the district leader representing Chelsea. And we have convened this webinar because we came across a report that demonstrates that there is soil contamination at Fulton and Elliott-Chelsea, two projects located in the Chelsea neighborhood of Manhattan, and both are slated for demolition and redevelopment. We have with us tonight Dr. Gordon Binghorst, who is a geologist and who has expertise in soil contamination and mitigation of such contamination. And we're very excited to have an expert with us who can walk us through what this report means, how concerning it is, and what mitigation looks like. We're also joined by State Senator Tom Duane, who is going to be with us any minute. But before we go into talking with Dr. Binghorst and Senator Duane, I have a quick presentation just to situate the audience and underscore what we are discussing tonight. So I am going to share my screen and then walk through a couple of slides. So let me enter full screen. Okay. So just to situate the audience, Fulton is located, the first building that is slated for demolition is located on 19th Street at the corner of 9th Avenue, while for the Elliott-Chelsea campus, the Chelsea Addition building is the first building slated for demolition, and it is on West 27th Drive between 9th Avenue and 10th Avenue. You can see on the map the full campuses going from 16th Street to 19th Street and bounded by 9th Avenue for Fulton, and from 25th to 27th Street from 9th to 10th Avenue for Elliott-Chelsea. Under the plan as it is proposed, it would see the demolition of all 24 buildings, 18 residential buildings, and it would see the reconstruction of much larger structures. So the soil quality was basically assessed, and the developer and in conjunction with NYCHA, they didn't guess, they tested. This was part of the requirement for the environmental study that needs to be performed in order for this project to receive all the approvals. And what it found, so what it did is that it did a geophysical survey and direct push soil borings, which means that they basically inserted with pressure some canisters inside the soil and captured samples. There were nine soil borings. And that advanced to 20 feet below grade. The sampling was then analyzed for a number of contaminants, including heavy metals and vapors. The groundwater was also investigated between 10.8 and 15.2 feet below grade. So what they found is that the immediate subsurface between 0 and 12 feet is actually non-native fill, and it's also known as urban land. And it is basically a composite of sand, silt, gravel, brick, and ash. And this comes from the time when the existing buildings were constructed, and they basically took any material that they came across, whatever was there, and we'll see that there was a lot of stuff that was there, including existing buildings, but also gas stations and factories. All this material was basically crushed, and this is on that material that they built the existing buildings. Below 12 feet, you hit the native soil and the bedrock. What the report found is that there is soil contamination, heavy metals that exceed the safety limit, specifically for lead. At Elliott-Chelsea, it reaches 2,680 milligram, where the limit should be 400. And at Fulton, it reaches 2,180 grams, same limit. Additionally, toxic metals at Elliott-Chelsea in exceedance of what is deemed acceptable include cadmium, copper, and manganese. And barium and mercury also exceed the safety thresholds. How does acceptable get defined? Under DEC definition, DEC stands for the Department of Environmental Conservation, and it is a state agency. And basically, there are three tiers. The first one, that is known as unrestricted, is the most strict standard. It means that it is safe for any type of activity, housing, school, hospital, but also for farming, which, obviously you want to make sure that you're farming in an environment that is safe so that all this contamination doesn't get transferred into the food. Then the tier 2 is the restricted residential threshold, and this is deemed an acceptable standard to develop housing. So it has contamination, but it is contained, and it is considered safe for housing construction. And then the tier 3, where you can have commercial or industrial use, and it is basically not safe for a residential or recreational use, such as a playground or a school. So spotlight on lead, which is the main contaminant that is reported in this report. The maximum detection is 2,150 milligram per kilogram of material. So lead is a heavy metal historically used in gasoline, paint, and plumbing. The site within the site context, it was found in 14 out of the 26 samples within the fill layer. So it's directly underneath the level of the ground. And the source is consistent with the historic use of the sites, where there were auto repairs and filling gas stations. So the data confirms that there's need for remediation. Once again, a little diagram. In green is your unrestricted limit. In blue is your residential limit that is, restricted. So it's a little bit polluted, but it's considered safe. And then in red, this is the current condition. Regulatory definitions, we went through that already. So unrestricted use, you can do a lot of stuff, including schools, housing, and farming. Restricted use, you can do, recreational and housing. And then, as we saw in the other slide, if it's, the third tier would be industrial and considered not safe for housing. So the concern with this contamination is exposure to the contaminated agents. So it can be by direct contact, by inhalation, by ingestion, or because it is the groundwater. So the remediation needs to address all these potential exposures. The risk really comes from the excavation. So when you excavate, if you leave it untouched, these agents basically don't travel, they don't become airborne. But as soon as you excavate, then there's dust generation, contaminated particles of lead, barium, copper, mercury, as we just saw. And it also releases vapors that are trapped gases that escape from the soil. As we saw, the area that is contaminated is the area that needs to be excavated. In order to build these buildings, because they will have basements, the excavation needs to reach 10 to 12 feet, which is where the contamination is located. So we went through that already. The historical context and the source of the contamination, the urban fill layer at both sides are underlain by a layer of non-native fill, debris, ash, demolition materials. And as we saw, they range from 1 to 14 feet deep, and there are legacy materials that contain metals. The uses at the site included at Fulton a factory use, ironwork, motor freight station, auto filling station. There was also a dry cleaner. And at Elliott-Chelsea, there were machine shops, auto paint, and a New York Con Edison substation. So we've gone through this slide already. This shows you the safety limit, the Fulton Max and Elliott-Chelsea Max. And then there are secondary findings. Other metals and vapors were also identified. Compounds such as benzopyrene, chrysene exceed the restricted standard, which is typical for historic ash fill. Other metals we discussed already, mercury, zinc, copper is also present. And then at Elliott-Chelsea, there's high levels of barium, copper, mercury, and in the groundwater, petroleum sheen was observed in one boring. So how does mitigation happen? Basically, once the excavation is done, there's a wetting agent where you're basically hosing water to prevent dust from becoming airborne. The trucks get washed and stabilized to prevent tracking dirt into the streets. And then for all the idle stockpile, there is like a big cover that is put on top of it so that it doesn't fly away. There's also the creation of exclusion zones with fencing and signage that will prevent unauthorized access to all the excavation area. In order to protect the community, what is typically done is in an air monitoring plan, a community air monitoring plan. The acronym is CAMP. So there's real-time monitoring for organic vapors and dust at the perimeter. There's a dust suppression using water sprays, and then a stop work order if levels rise. And typically, in these types of construction environments, there's the work stops immediately if air monitors detect elevated levels. Finally, you should all know that we are within the public comment period and all of you can participate. The deadline to submit comments has been extended. Initially, it was going to be January 24. We were able to raise the concern with the Department of Environmental Conservation. They have agreed to push back the deadline. And it is now February 23rd, 2026. You can submit your written comments to the email address that is on your screen, mandy.yaw@dec.ny.gov. The hard copy of the documents is available at the Muhlenberg Library that is located at 209 West 23rd Street. And as well as at Manhattan Community Board for District Office, which is located at 424 West 33rd Street. But easier yet is to access those documents online for those who have a computer and access to a internet connection. And the URL is on your screen. All this information will be posted. I'll make sure that it becomes available so it's easily accessible. Up until now, it hasn't been very easy to find, but we're working with DEC and others to make sure that the public can easily access this information. So that's it for my presentation. I'm going to stop sharing my screen And the person you really want to hear from is Dr. Gordon Binghorst. And thank you so much for being with us tonight. You are the expert, so I'm going to shut up and I'm going to let you speak. Did what I say was correct? And do you concur with this assessment that I just gave? And can you help us understand what this condition means and what this community should do to make sure that our health is protected?
So thank you very much, Layla, and thank you for having me. You did a very nice job presenting the background. Just by way of introduction, I spent my entire career as an environmental consultant, mostly in Connecticut, doing soil borings, laboratory testing, soil, groundwater, soil vapor, working for both developers and working for private clients and doing environmental site assessment and cleanup work. Now I work for a nonprofit in New York called Pure Earth, and we do basically lead investigation and cleanup work in lower and middle income countries. So I've shifted my career a little bit, but I still have plenty of knowledge that is pertinent to what we're talking about tonight. First, I just would like to start by saying that the investigations and the contamination that they found is not surprising whatsoever. It's in fact would be surprising not to find it. Most of the contamination is associated with prior use. Having either a gas station, auto garage, the vinegar factory, machine shops, all of these operations generate contamination in addition to the historic fill that was used on the property. So to find things like lead and benzopyrene, which are heavier weight petroleum products, gasoline, and even some of the tetrachloroethylene, which is a solvent. They found pesticides. They found low levels of PCBs in one sample. So again, all of these are sort of very consistent with the former use and the presence of urban fill on the property. So in terms of the threat to residents, it's a interesting question because mostly the exposure to people is through direct exposure if they're going to touch the soil and potentially ingest the soil. And Layla, you're correct that most of the exposure route would become enhanced once they start digging in the soil. In the way of risk mitigation and cleanup work, they're digging very deep, 10, 12-foot basements for these buildings in addition to the foundations for the overlying building. So they'll wind up removing the majority of the soil and it will be handled off-site. Okay, so in terms of that, you can't get any better than that than digging it up and hauling it away from in terms of what is left behind. Now around the perimeter of the buildings, there may be some residual contamination in soils that may or may not be dealt with, depending on what their actual plan is. They may choose to excavate shallow soils over the entire property and ship it off-site, and maybe down to 2 or greater feet in depth, and replace it with cleaner soil. Again, that's a risk mitigation technique, so it's not present at ground surface. With respect to impacts to residents of the building, the direct exposure, issue from soils beneath the building is not of concern. There would be some concern with volatile organic compounds, such as the tetrachloroethylene, which is a dry cleaning solvent, entering the building, or some of the gasoline compounds that you mentioned. And in fact, in some of the soil vapor samples, they did find levels which were of some concern. I did see in some of the environmental impact statements that they did plan on putting a vapor barrier beneath each of the buildings to mitigate any vapor intrusion into the buildings themselves. So managing the environmental risks at such sites as this proposed development is, again, it's not novel. It has to be done well and in due consideration of the exposure risks, including, like Layla discussed, air monitoring for particulate matter and etc. They do employ typically things like dust management in terms of wetting the soil and covering stockpiles, having health and safety protocols for people working at the site, having some additional monitoring for buildings on the perimeter of the site. So again, all of this should be, this is not a fly-by-night operation. This is a large development, particularly the Fulton 11 part. They've sought brownfields money. So it already involves state and federal agencies, such as the DEC in New York, which will monitor and make sure that things are done correctly. I did see in the environmental impact statement, again, that they had certain precautions taken in terms of like the vapor barriers and additional testing to be done, and coming up with basically a construction and demolition plan. Of
Great.
concern, of concern to me, which I really didn't see in any of the documents that I found and that you provided, was a demolition plan for the buildings. And I am sure it will come as part of a building demolition permit that I'm sure would be required by the city and others. But things like managing lead paint, asbestos, which I think you mentioned, Layla, they had a plan for that. And also PCBs and building materials, such as window caulk is very common. So that should be assessed as part of a building demolition permit, and any mitigation again taken before the buildings come down. So that's, I mean, to me, that's maybe perhaps the biggest concern. These are very large buildings. Demolishing them, again, it's not something that's not done all the time in New York, but making sure that everybody's dotted the I's and crossed the T's to make sure that the appropriate safeguards are in place.
Great. That's actually very helpful. We've been joined by Senator Tom Duane. Senator, good evening, and thank you for being with us. Before I turn to you, Senator, I just have a quick follow-up for you, Gordon. Can you tell us what happens if the sensors, get a reporting that the level of airborne contaminants has gone above the threshold? Because the big concern for this particular site, especially at Elliott-Chelsea, is that the site themselves, and it's like 18 buildings that are going to be demolished, pretty much 9 per campus. They are directly adjacent to an elementary school.
Mhm.
And this elementary school has an outdoor playground with play equipment. What should be expected, and is there some things that should go above and beyond if this plan were to move forward? Which I want to also caveat by saying that this plan has not been approved. So
Sure.
we are taking steps and measures so that we understand what may happen, but it is not a done deal. But walk us through what should be expected if something goes wrong, and what kind of like weekly assessment of the presence of the contaminants in or around the school should be done.
So you have to separate real-time monitoring, which is something that you have a result as it happens, right? And there's only certain things one can monitor in that fashion. In a site like this, it would be a particulate matter, like so PM 2.5 or PM 10, which is the dust. What that dust contains, be it silica, asbestos, lead, you don't know that in the field. That is a laboratory test. So that would take longer to ascertain. Typically, they have like I said, a particulate matter, and they have somebody that is continually monitoring that on the perimeter of the site, and maybe not one, but maybe several of them. There's also ways to collect a sample over the course of the day, and send that to a laboratory and get an answer in a day or 2 or 3, in terms of things like lead concentration in air, asbestos, silica. So I would advocate for something like that is done also in addition to just particulate monitoring, because again, you don't know what's in that particular matter. It is like I said, a real-time number that you can then take action by, doing additional wetting of soil, for example. Perhaps they can also stage this where when they do the demolition work that the school is not in session. They may do additional monitoring around the school, putting plates, horizontal plates around the school to collect dust, or like I said, active air monitoring, which basically sucks in a low quantity of air over the course of a day through a filter.
Great, that's very helpful. Senator Duane, thank you so much for joining us. You represented the area for 12 years, maybe even more than that. Tell us a little bit about your approach to this situation and those findings. Are you concerned?
I am incredibly concerned about disturbing the soil. I know about what has been uh, originally underneath these buildings, and also there's a good chance that much of this was landfill from who knows where that these buildings were built on, and I mostly and originally approached it when I discovered that Related and NYCHA had changed the plan and were actually not going to be rehabilitating the buildings, but we're going to demolish them. And just in general, demolition always leads to displacement. Now, we've been in an all-out battle with NYCHA over that, but fortunately, and I want to thank Layla and Gordon, thank you for being here, for uncovering this heretofore hidden uh, information about why demolition of these buildings is such a horrible idea. And finally, just as not as if the environmental concerns that are horrible, but so is just the general loss of low income housing. And we have a new mayor who is said he's devoted to creating low income housing. So why would you be destroying low income housing while you're allegedly creating low income housing? It's like quicksand. You could never possibly build housing at the rate of the pre existing low income housing that exists at these two developments. And I represented them first as a district leader, as Layla is now, and then on the New York City Council for 7 years, and then 14 years in the state Senate. And when I left, when people still liked me, so hopefully that is still true. But this is my hometown, and I don't want to lose my neighbors. I don't want to contaminate my neighbors. I don't want to contaminate the people who live around these developments. They're crucial to the fabric of the community. And just as an aside, the Fulton houses originally were the people who lived there were Hispanic and also longshore workers. There was a tremendous number of Irish people who lived there. It's changed over time, but there's a rich history of low income and working class people living in these buildings. And the idea that not only are we going to destroy this, but we're also going to contaminate the entire neighborhood is just, it just boggles the mind. And by the way, money has already been somewhat approved by New York State to start the demolition, which is really terrifying. And I'll stop there. But thank you both for your work on this.
Thank you, Senator. Um, the and another aspect of this proposal, we talk about mitigation. Isn't it fair to say that the less we disturb the soil, the better off we are? And I'm going to turn this question to you, Gordon.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to say I am neither for or against like the demolition of the housing and the bill. I'm completely trying to be independent and look at this solely from an environmental standpoint. That contamination is
I'm
present.
just permitting myself to be political, but I do not want you to be political. I'm just saying I can be political, but don't
You,
you be political, please.
you were well within your right to be political, Tom. So just again, from an environmental standpoint, if you were to ask somebody to just clean up the site, there's contamination present. It can make it is a hazard as it is currently. So one has to then judge, are you going to make matters worse by the presumptive remedy is to excavate it and cart it off the site. I mean, if you were going to clean up the contaminated soil, it is literally present at ground surface right now. That's how you would do it. So when, they're proposing to, excavate probably more than would be excavated in terms of a cleanup. So from purely environmental standpoint, they're not doing a terrible thing. It's just it has to be done appropriately. And, from what I see, the studies that are done, the people involved, I it's my hope that it will be. I can't ascertain that for sure, but I mean, all things are pointing in that direction. So again, it is the presumptive remedy for a site like this is to excavate a certain amount of soil above standards, so it can be used even with restricted use where there's some environmental institutional controls that protect people from the residual contamination that is left behind at say like beneath 2 or 4 feet below ground surface.
And this project is going to, take 16 years to come to full completion. And that is going to be the length of exposure to potential contaminants through this excavation. Is the duration of the project something that is of concern in your opinion?
Again, not if it's done appropriately. I mean, that is the key aspect here is that, the proper air monitoring is done. It's people are reactive to it, that there's, the requisite laboratory testing that is done, the soil management plan is in place, and also that they address the remaining residual contamination around the site appropriately. Meaning like they may just choose to excavate beneath the building to make their basement and not address what's the remaining at surface soil contamination. So ensuring that that is done would be also a added benefit.
Great. Senator Duane.
I'm familiar with the cleanup of PCBs from the Hudson River. I'm somewhat familiar with what's happening at Gowanus. Then there's the Newtown Creek where not much has been done at all. Now there's land surrounding all of this water. Are you familiar with what has happened in mitigation in the 2 areas where something has going on, nothing at Newtown, and any other additional land areas where of something of this scale has gone on?
Yes, I'm familiar with the guana. I'm familiar with all three that you mentioned, and there's many more proposed in New York, unfortunately, that involve additional contamination. The contamination they dug out of Gowanus Canal and what is present in Newtown Creek, it far exceeds this. I mean, there is an enormous plume of chlorinated solvents, for instance, coming off of the Newtown Creek, going over the large parts of Greenpoint. So that to me is potentially way more impactful to residents in the neighborhood. All things considering, what they found is relatively low contamination. Yes, it's above the standards, 2,500 parts per million in lead. But again, the lead is a fairly stable, just to correct you, Layla, you did talk about lead volatilizing. It doesn't do that. It's a very stable compound. So mercury can indeed volatilize off, and so can gasoline constituents, but not a heavy metal like lead. And again, this is like just very typical urban fill with brick and ash and other detritus in there. And I am sure that they will find some things that they don't know about, like a buried underground storage tank, for example, that they're going to have to deal with when they get to it. They did a GPR survey, which is hopefully supposed to find those, but there was gasoline tanks underground, a service station, etc. So there will be surprises, I am sure, and they will have to react accordingly.
And what can this community do, given that there is an elementary school, public elementary school to the east, there is a daycare center to the west, there is a private school across the street that's for Elliott-Chelsea, and then there's a daycare center very very near Fulton Houses, as well as as Senator Duane mentioned, number of residential developments, including Penn South and other buildings that house seniors. What can this community do to make sure that we are getting accurate information?
So the the cheap and easy way is just to simply rely on the kindness and diligence of our regulators in New York State and federally. That, is somewhat, but again, to ask the right questions and make sure that everything is being done appropriately on your behalf, it may require hiring an independent consultant to do that. Not somebody like myself anymore, but a company that has the resources and can evaluate it and make appropriate suggestions. Like, for instance, we talked about air monitoring. So making sure that they're monitoring for the correct constituents of concern, such as silica and PCBs and what have you in the air, and lead, and that they're doing it in a timely fashion and that they react accordingly. So whether that goes in the plan and somebody at DEC approves it and that's sufficient, I can't say. It depends on who's working on the project, obviously, and the diligence that they spend. Given that it is in the hands of the DEC and the brownfields folks, typically it's going to garner way more attention than a very private effort. A private developer doing this without federal funding, for example, or state funding, without the involvement of the DEC, may cut way more corners than in the case of the involvement of the regulators I mentioned.
Are they mandated to use these pathways, or are they doing it because they're getting a subsidy?
I think it's a combination. I think that there are certain laws and regulations that govern it, and I think getting brownfields funding puts them in a different realm of having to attend to those responsibilities.
And is it triggered by the level of pollution and contamination, or does that level not come into play into the track that it goes?
No, I think that it may garner additional attention based on some of the contaminant levels, but no, I think they have to do their due diligence, like the phase 1 environmental site assessment that identified the things like the vinegar factory and the machine shops, etc. A phase 2 where they actually go out and do soil borings and additional investigations that react to those findings. Like, did they find, for instance, the lead contamination? Did they find a plume of gasoline constituents that may volatilize into the building? Those are all things, once they find, indications of that they're required to do their due diligence and figure out and mitigate the risks from that. Be it, like, for instance, the vapor barrier beneath the building to mitigate vapors emanating into the building.
Great. That's very helpful. So we are receiving.
Can I just ask one other question? I was represented the Trade Center tragically on 9/11, and having been down there and actually breathing in what was just from the demolition, horrible demolition of the building. In addition to then what was done before they started to rebuild. Are you familiar with what? And I know that this is tiny compared to what happened there, but can you draw any parallels between what was done and protections that may or may not have been put into place for that as compared to this project?
I think the scale is obviously much larger. I think obviously that was not a controlled demolition project, and things happen obviously very quickly and very dramatically, and a lot of the impacts that were from many of the same things that would be pertinent here, such as silica, asbestos. I don't know how much lead paint were in the trade centers, but yeah, it's the same, but much smaller in scale, and also the fact that this is planned. And monitoring in place. I don't know, there were many impacts from the actual collapse of the buildings themselves at the World Trade Center, and then obviously, taking all of the material out and, what they did there. So a different scale, for sure.
Thank you. So we have a number of questions in the Q&A, and please, keep typing those questions. They're really very helpful to lead the conversation. One of them is, how long will it take for this environmental mediation and mitigation to take place?
I think that part, I'm not a building demolition expert, but once the building comes down and they're ready to do the excavation work, Again, it depends on the size of the building and how many, literally how many truckloads of dirt have to be dug up. But sites like this, they dig it up and they put it in the truck and off it goes. But a 10-foot deep or 12-foot deep hole of this side could take, I don't know, maybe a month, 2 months. It depends on how it's organized and how many trucks they're using and the equipment on the site.
Okay, that's very helpful. Another question that came in has to do with the water quality. Is the water being tested?
They did do some groundwater monitoring in their investigatory work. They did find some low levels, chlorinated solvents, gasoline compounds in the groundwater. As you all know, in New York, we don't drink the groundwater, which is a good thing. They also found a lot of sodium in the water samples, which indicates that it's basically brackish or almost saline water based on the levels of sodium. I'm not even sure why they tested sodium. So yes, there is some groundwater contamination, and the risk associated with that again would be volatilization into the buildings themselves.
Okay. Another question that came from Ashley Lawson. How long will the testing take now that we know there's contamination in the soil?
I don't know their schedule. Obviously, I don't work, I think, Langing Engineering. I think for the first building, which is Fulton 11, I believe it's termed, they have a draft investigation report that I came across, dated October 2025. So I don't know if there's additional work beyond that. Again, it depends. I don't know what additional work would be required for the investigatory work.
Great.
And then one would also come up with once they're satiated with, they've done the appropriate investigation, is coming up with some sort of mitigation, both for the soil that's going to be left at ground surface, but also a management plan for how this is going to be handled after the demolition of the building.
Great. Another question from Joel Kupferman. Why do you have faith in DEC when in so many cases they fail to enforce necessary work stoppages when exceedance occurs? DEC refuses to do indoor air monitoring, relies on PM10, not PM2 monitoring. And I have no idea what PM10 and PM2 and essentially.
It's the size of the particulate matter that they monitor for.
I see.
And I don't have that much faith, Joel, in DEC. I don't know them per se. Which is why I did suggest that I think it might be wise and make everybody sleep better, so to speak, is to hire an independent person to at least evaluate the plans that they're coming up with and make additional suggestions about how to just increase the protection for area residents. It's also possible that you hire them to do some independent monitoring if you don't trust the firms and the plans they came up with.
In your experience, is it typical that a plan of this magnitude with a report that discloses what we know was reported would have so little community engagement? Just for you, Gordon, but also for the audience. There was actually a meeting organized by the PTA of the local elementary school, PS33. This meeting happened, I believe, 3 weeks ago. The report had already been released. And we were actually still well within the initial deadline for public comment. So we were in public comment at that time. And the lead from the developer team was actually asked a specific question about soil contamination. And in his response to the parents and other attendants of the meeting, stated that extensive testing had been done, and I quote, he said, "There is nothing there." So we don't know exactly what he meant, and we may want to give them the benefit of the doubt, but typically, is it the standard to actually not engage with the community when something like that happens? Should we expect maybe a presentation from DEC or from another environmental body that would inform the community so that we have an opportunity to ask these questions rather than relying on I'm very happy to be sponsoring this webinar, but is there and I'm very happy that you're here to address our questions, but could we expect that others who are really in charge of this project would actually do this service?
I think yes. I think, in my opinion, all of the remedial work that I've ever done, we've always involved the community very heavily for lots of reasons. So yes, I think it is the role of DEC to do that, and maybe some of the city agencies. So yes, I would expect that and demand it. I don't. I read some of the promotional materials about this project, and they indicated that they did have community outreach. What that consisted of, it was not clear. But this has been in the works for many, many years.
Although the plan has changed dramatically in the course of this. I've experienced with the repowering of power plants, the rehabilitation of power plants, the modernization, and money was always, it's in law, state law, that money be put aside for the community to defend itself against, for instance, having to, the impacts of particulates, etc. There is no money set aside to hire someone to help us out. In this case, we would have to raise that money ourselves, as I understand it. And the other issue that goes along with that is it's virtually impossible to find environmental experts who are not in some way have a conflict of interest because they are being used by the developer or even NYCHA. But the people, one person working on one project with one firm makes it impossible for them to help us. So there's no money and it's hard to find a consultant. What do we do?
So I mean, I'm such an independent consultant with no conflict of interest. But I'm a sole practitioner and I work for a different company that doesn't quite do this work anymore. So I'm not volunteering at all. But somebody potentially from out of state might be a viable person. You have to be knowledgeable about New York state law and federal laws. I'm not particularly familiar with all of the New York state laws. I worked mostly in Connecticut for the bulk of my career. The science stays the same. The methodology for investigating and cleaning up sites stays the same, but how one interprets and manages it changes from state to state. So yes, I think you're best to find somebody. I would look for a smaller out-of-state consulting company, perhaps in New Jersey or Connecticut, who could help. But yes, I agree. There are many cases I've worked on where it's hard to find a consultant that doesn't have some conflict of interest with a major person involved like this. So yes.
Yeah. And is it reasonable to expect that, given the scale of this project, that the developer would actually fund the private consultant that would be hired maybe by the school or by the tenants themselves?
I would say no. I mean, the developer hires their consultants like Langen Engineering, right? Who's involved in this project, and I forget the name of the company that did the phase one and the initial site investigations, but that's who he's hiring to do the appropriate work scope and make sure that all of the environmental due diligence is done and the residents are protected. So to fund somebody else to do something on an independent scale, I don't think a developer would jump at that chance whatsoever.
This developer is not very generous with sharing its information with the community. In fact, I would say it's been absolutely horrendous that they do not share where they get their information from with the community. And NYCHA has not required them to hand it over to us either.
No, but I mean the DEC website had a lot of information, and also I found an environmental impact statement done for the feds I can send to you. I found all that online without looking very hard. The environmental impact statement had quite a lot of information in it. That's where I found out about the vapor barrier they were putting beneath the building, etc.
Yeah, and I think that it's the environmental impact statement is a 2,000-page document. It was actually issued in May of 2025, and the final was issued in June, and then the record of decision came out in July. And it was a very, very dense document that we did our best to read, and we certainly knew that there was contamination. We did not fully appreciate that the remediation would necessitate the steps that is going to take, but also for a layperson trying to figure out all this jargon, and also understanding an EIS has a chapter about traffic and air quality and sanitation and sewer. And I mean, you have to become an expert in all these areas if you want to have a fair shot of understanding exactly what is happening. And given that we are now in a public comment period specifically for the soil contamination, and I will take the liberty to editorialize here a little bit, but I feel that this community is really being ignored by either a state agency, or maybe a city entity, maybe NYCHA themselves have a responsibility to inform the community. What I would say is that if a developer comes and wants to really be a partner in good faith, one would expect of them proactively to take these steps. And it is really a disappointment to see that the opportunity was presented to them. They were in front of the parent body at the local elementary school, and very unfortunately this information did not get communicated. So getting off my soapbox and going through some more questions, and I want to be mindful of everybody's time. There's a number of questions about the phasing of this project. We touched on that a little bit. The demolition is going to be phased and scattered. So are we going to have to basically have a independent monitor and fundraise for that purpose for the entire time? Pretty much that if we want to feel safe, given that the level of trust is non-existent with the developer, it looks like it would be a good idea to plan for the entire duration of the demolition.
So, I mean, this is going to be phased in over years, right? So perhaps you want to start with, your with the right foot and hire an independent contractor to see how they do on their first demolition and construction project, and then make a judgment call whether additional independent testing is warranted in the future. But holding to their feet to the fire a little bit at the beginning is the appropriate time to do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Another question from Miriam Fisher: do the entities proposing demolition have an official track record of either following protocols or not in their many previous projects? And I guess my follow-up question to that question is there actually a database of offenders with DEC?
So as I mentioned earlier, I haven't seen very much on the demolition. So it's not in any of the documents that how they're going to do it or who. So I can't really answer that question. But and yes, I am sure there's some database somewhere, but I'm not really familiar.
Okay, but like for example, the developers related, they did Hudson Yards, which was a major project. Phase one was completed. Is there a way to figure out if they did a good job there? Is there a database somewhere where can we ask DEC if there were any I'm sure there was air monitoring. I mean, did they trigger these monitors? Is there a track record that one could check?
I would check with DEC that very question. That was a very, similar project. It had way higher contamination at Hudson Yards that they dealt with. But what they monitored and how they reacted to it would be, if it's the same companies involved, would be a good project to investigate.
Great. Excellent. Going through the questions from the audience. There's a question, okay, from Elizabeth Cohen. Coal tar was used in line to line the inside of pipes of byproduct of manufacturing gas, which Con Ed did. That's who they say this is the #1 source of water pollution. So even though the water is piped in, it may be impacted by this practice, which was used to double the useful life of metal pipes until the mid-70s. Coal tar was present in large quantities at Con Ed sites in the area. We know lead pipes, polluted water that travels through it. Shouldn't the drinking water be tested?
So typically, I mean, I'm not 100% familiar with New York's testing regimen, but most public utilities are required to test water at various distribution points throughout a community. So I am sure that is being done, and they have different frequencies for that testing. Like they might test for bacteria every month, they might test for lead every quarter, they might test for volatile organics, but there's a very long list of things that they typically test at least annually. And I'm sure coal tar, like the benzoate pyrene we talked about earlier, and creosote would be included in that list, at least on an annual basis, if not more frequent.
Great. And then there's also a question about the health and neurological problems from exposure to mercury.
I think that might be beyond the scope of this call. I mean, each of the contaminants we've discussed have, various degrees. And again, it depends on exposure, duration, and extent. But yes, all of these contaminants, there are a few that you mentioned, like barium, which is not considered a toxic metal, and neither is manganese or iron. So there are certain metals that aren't considered toxic. So yeah, but mercury is for sure.
Okay, thanks. I think we all appreciate that. We have a number of questions from the audience for Senator Duane. Question for Senator Tom Duane. I understand you have brought a lawsuit around this land grab. Can you tell us more about that lawsuit, the named parties, and where it all stands at this time?
I just lost us. Sorry about that. You can hear me?
We can hear you.
Now we can't hear you.
Actually, while I get this back, and then
Okay.
Here.
Oh, I think you need to unmute. Okay.
Yeah, it says you're muted, and then we can hear you sort of.
Do you want to try like that, Tom?
Here, I'm back. Okay. I'm back. Well, the first thing that Related did was they tried to evict people by bringing them to Supreme Court where they weren't entitled to have attorneys. I was not so involved with that except for to be outraged by it. But the suit that's going on now, we did have a hearing. It was very it was very broad. Many things. There were many elements to the suit, but I think and we don't know where the judge was going to come down on that. Of course, judges are somewhat inscrutable, but we are adding this environmental concern into the case, and I've just in the process of signing on to that part of this additional part of the brief. And I don't know if there's going to be an additional hearing based on that. Probably not, but there might be, but probably not. And we just have to hope that this is a very, 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 very fair judge, which is my way of, you can't ask for them to be partial. They have to be impartial. They have to be very, very, very fair. Let's hope they're very, very, very fair to the community. And I'll leave it at that. But yes, I'm happy to be one of the plaintiffs in the lawsuit.
Great. Thank you, Tom. And we really appreciate all the support that you have brought to this issue. We have another question about if the contaminated soil is excavated, how and where is the short-term storage, and how long is short-term storage, and how and where is the long-term final storage of this contaminated soil?
Okay, so for short-term storage, they don't want to store it on site. They would like to ideally put it in a truck and take it away. But there will be a stockpile of soil on the site. It will be covered nightly, and as trucks are available, they will put them in, and the likely disposal site is somewhere in New Jersey.
So, and this is standard in construction for New York City.
Absolutely.
So contaminated stuff gets, and is it then decontaminated somehow, or?
It depends. There are different levels of, this is where the levels of contamination come in. And there are certain soils that are considered RCRA hazardous waste, and they go to hazardous waste landfills. There are soils that go to treatment facilities before their final disposal. And there are soils that just go into landfills as is, as cover material, etc.
And so
They also use such soil to make asphalt out of. They use it as a soil source for that as well. So a variety of destinations for the soil, and it's all based on soil quality and price.
And this is in addition to obviously, all the construction, the building material from the demolition.
Correct. Those go for construction and demolition debris, maybe a different landfill.
Okay, so
And potentially different processing.
But it would be impossible for DEC or other regulatory people to be on this at all times to make sure that the proper protocols are being followed. And there's a level of mistrust that's happened with this developer and also with NYCHA. And not specific to this, but when I was in the state senate, I was walking by the Chelsea Piers, and they built an entire marina that I noticed without even going to the Army Corps of Engineers. And I have seen NYCHA, the way they handle just the garbage generated by their development. I'm very concerned that we have a lot of work if this is to go forward, that we would have to be watching this so closely, because we can't really depend on regulatory agencies or NYCHA or the developer to do what they should be doing. And this is not directed specifically to you, but to all of the people on the webinar. This is a very tough road ahead of us if this project goes forward in the way that it's being thrown at us now.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, I think
Gordon, I'm sorry.
that's okay. I was just saying that, as I indicated earlier, not NYCHA, but maybe, the DEC or the brownfields folks would be helpful in helping make sure it gets done correctly. And I do know, Tom, that there are lots of issues at construction sites of, particularly where there are no regulators involved, where all sorts of shenanigans happens. So it does happen, and it's unfortunate, to say the least.
Yeah, no, we really appreciate that you're, helping us understand and, also bring a little bit of comfort in the fact that, this contamination can be addressed. I think it's great news to hear that, and also to get your advice on how we can make sure that indeed all these protections and all these mitigations do happen if this project moves forward. We have a number of questions and comments that continue to arrive, but really along the lines of what we have already discussed. I will read another comment from Joel Kopferman. He says, NYCHA is a bad actor, history of bad enforcement, including falsification of records. There is a vulnerable population. NYCHA has a history of lack of oversight of contractors, independent federal monitors that were paid millions did not stop deleterious demolition, remediation, and construction practices. If penalties do not work, no mention of the involvement of the New York State Department of Health, no talk of cumulative impact, no provision for medical mediation monitoring construction sites that have been associated with outbreaks of Legionella. 8 of the 12 causes of Harlem Legionella outbreaks were city-owned buildings. Related has a history and a large inventory of building properties that pose adverse effect to residents. Out of this comment, a question: is there any penalties that can be, imposed if the remediation and mitigation is not done properly?
Sure, mostly by the DEC, for example. So yes, there are definitely penalties that can be involved in this. And to your point, Tom, and with respect to Hudson Yards, that might be your first best case to look at how related did. The soil that got carted away where it wound up, they should be receiving receipts and manifests associated with every truckload of soil that should be in a report somewhere, probably thousands of them, in fact. So that might be a good, like I said, test case to see how they did it. It's much worse.
Some light reading for Saturday night. Now remember, simultaneously, they're going to be doing Hudson Yards West at the same time that they're planning on doing this. So they're going to be very busy beavers, and so will we have to be monitoring this as it goes forward. I do want to say I very much appreciate that you're not catastrophizing the situation, and it's very important because we don't know what the future holds. However, I have decided it is my job to catastrophize it, so you'll have to excuse me for doing that because I've just been around the block too many times. There's some great actors, there's some medium, and there's some bad, and I don't know what the future holds here, but I really do sincerely appreciate your not engaging in the catastrophizing that is my role in this project.
As a consultant, I have to have the independent voice coming out. So I do try. I will say that given there's been a lot of people let go with the Environmental Protection Agency that are looking for jobs right now, and you might find somebody there that would be more than willing to help you.
Now that's also a very, very good point. Very, very good point. Well, thank you. I want to be really mindful of everybody's time. I want to note a couple of things. The first one is that we have over 70 attendants, participants in this webinar. So we really appreciate this level of robust engagement that really demonstrates that there's a great desire by this community to get more information. I will add once again that we are in public comment. So if you have concerns, if you have questions, if you want to ask DEC to actually do certain things, take certain steps, now is the time to do it. And finally, I will say that we will continue to work on this issue, monitor what's happening, bring experts, and make sure that the lines of communications are as open as possible, so that this community, in its narrowest sense and its broadest sense, whether it is parents, tenants of NYCHA buildings, tenants of adjacent buildings, patrons of businesses, workers who work in the area, that everybody has access to this really, really important information. It has been an exercise in frustration, to say the least. And once again, I'm very, very appreciative to you, Gordon, for agreeing to spend an hour with us. And I want to say that you were actually not even scheduled to be on this call tonight. Your colleague was supposed to come, and you agreed to. He had a conflict last minute, and you agreed to, take on this little exercise. So we're really, really grateful. for the information, for your participation, and for providing this guidance. I echo Senator Duane. I think it is a little bit our role to catastrophize, because we really feel that there's value in making sure that we get heard. And unfortunately, sometimes you have to be a little bit more forceful, to get the answers that this community needs and deserves.
Layla, could I just interject one question? Because there was one question I just saw in the chat from Dara Wishengrad, who said, "Can we get them to cover our windows with like plastic?" That's a very practical solution, honestly, because there will be dust in the air, some of which is going to be not measurable or not captured. So very practical things like that is a good idea. I don't know that you get anybody to pay for it, but just even if one does it themselves, it does provide a measure of protection for mitigating dust entry into your house, whatever.
Combined with air conditioning and water and air filtering, because and I would be remiss if I didn't thank you very much for coming here on rather short notice. So I'm also appreciative, and also just Layla, just for your downright dogged determination. It is impressive, I must say. It is very impressive, and thank you for that.
Okay. Well, thank you all, and if you have additional questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your participation. Thank you to the audience. If you have further questions, please, by all means, I think you will know where to find me, so don't hesitate.
And the deadline again for comments is?
And the deadline for comments is, sorry, I think, Senator Duane, I think you have to kill your audio. You have to go back on mute. Thank you so much. The deadline to submit comments is February 23rd. You will be able to see this webinar. It will be posted on YouTube, and I'll make sure you have the link. I will make sure that all the information that we just shared is shared more broadly, including with the local community board. It will be on, I'll make sure that it is shared also by our local political club, the Chelsea Reform Democratic Club. We'll make sure that the information is available. We will reach out to the local publication, Chelsea Community News. We will ask them.
TAs.
Yes. All of the above. We'll make sure that the information gets circulated so that you have access to it. And if you have any follow-up questions, please, by all means, don't hesitate ever to reach out to me. Send me those questions. I'll make sure to reach out to Gordon or his colleague Jack Caravano, or others who have really very generously offered their expertise. And also, we look forward to engaging with DEC and to continue to engage with the developer. As frustrating as it is necessary, and we will continue to do that. Thank you all very much, and I wish you all a very, very good night. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.